Hi, everyone. Hi, Mary.
Hello, hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fallon Thompson, product manager here at Office Space. I've spent the past year working with teams across facilities, IT, and corporate real estate to help build Office Space Assets, a new tool that helps organizations gain total visibility and control over their assets with a full lifecycle and depreciation tracking as well. It's designed for teams managing complex, dynamic spaces across multiple sites, departments, and systems. And it's for leaders who are looking for clarity in what's often a really fragmented process. I'm joined today by Mary Carnes, who's led workplace and portfolio strategy for companies like Google and Bank of America and knows firsthand what it takes to run large distributed portfolios with evolving needs. Mary, thank you so much for being here. Would you like to share a little bit about your background yourself?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And a lot of the work that I have done over the years with space planning and workplace design has been aligning space with business goals and then working with teams to navigate their portfolio decisions. We were doing return to office strategies and space optimization. So now I get to partner with companies on how to do all of that, but more efficiently and with better data and kind of a fun platform, from my opinion. And I'm excited to talk about assets today because it's an overlooked but powerful way to support a smarter workplace strategy. It's honestly something I didn't consider much of when I was in planning, but I'm seeing how it can be impactful.
Yeah, could not agree more.
We'll get into that part.
Yeah, right. Let's start there, shall we? Based on what you're hearing from your clients, from peers, how important is visibility to workplace strategy today?
Well, visibility is critical. Our real estate and workplace teams are being asked to justify every line item, of course, in this like tumultuous world that we're in. And we now, though, we have the tools to get more specific and intentional about our spend. So the conversation is no longer just about how and when this office is full. The occupancy and utilization data matter. Yes, of course, they're my favorite. But the focus is shifting to how the space performs. And this, of course, includes everything in it. So our visibility into assets lets you look beyond the walls into the actual tools and infrastructure that enable work. And what I was thinking about this as a space planner, also the assets that take up space. I know sometimes my eye was trained to just look at furniture inventory, or it was trained to just look at the cubicles and ignore the massive copiers and things that take up space. These are assets. It's all, you can't do one without the other. So if you can't see this layer of information, it's really hard to plan intentionally.
No, totally. I feel like that's such an obvious statement, and it's also just completely overlooked. Like you just wouldn't
Mhm.
be thinking about that. But it also, right, it definitely aligns with what we heard during research. You know, we spoke with facilities managers and workplace leads, space planning leads, who told us things like we're still using spreadsheets that no one else can access, or assets are being handed off between departments and nobody knows what's in use or where it is. Where's that projector? Where's that laptop? We don't know. And those are just the small assets, right? It's a cascade of issues, honestly, because without visibility, there's really no shared understanding of the value or timing or even condition, which makes budget forecasting and life cycle planning just like essentially next to impossible. Aside from helping teams get out from that reactive stage of being able to see when assets lose value or need attention, how would you say, how does that lack of visibility affect future planning?
Future planning. So that starts well in advance of any movement. Budgeting and planning can start quarters, even years in advance. So you ideally would need a forward looking view of your assets so you can understand what's still usable, what will need to be retired in that window of change and move, and whether something should be replaced or repurposed at this time of change and move. So if you're expanding or redesigning a space, you obviously don't want to start from scratch. You want to understand what's already available and what's still under warranty and how it's being used. ultimately, this is a way to justify your investments with clean, credible data, especially if you're the one shaping the budget.
Massive responsibility. So, in your view, what makes asset visibility a strategic tool and not just an operational one?
Well, strategic because it ties directly to key pillars of workplace strategy: cost, space, the workplace, and experience. So if you're evaluating a reduction in square feet, knowing which assets can be reused or relocated helps you avoid repurchasing, but also helps you plan the space, as we were talking about. If you're designing new spaces, you want to know what tech is already in circulation and if it's working. If you're building a budget, having this life cycle data will let you delay unnecessary spending and extend the value of the stuff that you already have. So what we like to say is that asset tracking helps operations and asset intelligence helps leadership.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. So you have worked across massive multi-site portfolios. When you think about managing assets at that large of a scale, what has traditionally made that really hard or difficult?
Sorry, froze up. I froze
No,
up. Sorry about that.
all
I got
right.
a little notice my internet's temperamental.
All
Um,
good. Mine has been similarly. I can absolutely, I can
what
repeat the
was the
question.
end? Yes. What was it?
So you've worked across massive and multi-site portfolios.
Mhm.
When we think about managing assets at that level of scale, what has traditionally made it
Oh,
hard?
easy. Fragmentation of everything. Okay, so different departments track different things in different ways. Even in small companies, IT owns their assets, facilities has their assets, departments have their assets. Finance just needs to know an accurate valuation of spaces, including these assets. And those groups rarely share the same system of information, which means that decisions are happening in silos. And today, as companies become more and more decentralized, different geographical locations of the same company could easily have different assets and approaches to their inventory. So when you're planning moves and reconfigures of your space, if you have all this complexity, there's no single source of truth. And we always want that. We're always asking for that in space planning. So we tie this in as well. Then if you don't have it, you just don't know what's where, what you can still use. It's going to slow everything down, and it just ultimately increases risk in the end.
Totally. I can't tell you the number of users that I spoke to that said essentially exactly that, right? Facilities had their spreadsheet to track assets, IT had their software to track assets, and then finance had their own software to track the valuation of all of it together. And it was just completely, totally fragmented. And that's one thing that we designed our asset management tool to solve. You can centralize asset data, assign it to specific people or locations. You can track the condition, the life cycle, the status, service history, and then layer on costs and warranties on top of that. Which might sound honestly super simple, but having one system of of records changes the way people move through their space changes, their refreshes, and even the very much dreaded audit. And I think that's really powerful. It helps cross-functional teams align. It helps facilities, IT, finance, and CRE all rely on different views of the exact same data, that one single source of truth. And so, with that shared visibility, facilities can track maintenance and maximize their asset life. Finance gets that clean reporting that they want and need. IT can respond even faster to issues, and everyone's working from the same set of facts.
Exactly. So that's when the planning can be proactive. The teams are not just reacting to issues, but they're all coordinating around the same shared goals and business outcomes. And this has to happen in planning. So you're already doing this with your real estate teams, your business unit teams, all of this. So this is just that extra layer tied into one tool is the difference.
Totally. So I'd love to talk about workplace experience for a second. When people ask, right, how asset management fits into that, or how it fits into occupancy planning, for instance, what's your take?
Well, it's easy to, the simplest way to say it is if, utilization tells you how and when a space is being used, then your asset visibility can tell you what they're using and whether it's working. I had a client who had these like same exact huddle rooms on 2 floors, and they kept getting this complaint that everybody hears. There's not enough conference rooms. They're all booked, and there's like 5 on each floor. The same 2 on each floor are never booked. And so they had this information, they had reporting that told them that. They could not figure out why. And eventually they figured out that those 2 on both floors just happened to have Zooms that were broken or didn't have Zoom at all. And everybody was fighting over the 3 rooms with the Zoom. And that's how simple is that fix? You can avoid all those complaints if you had that insight into that. And so I was just blown away. We were talking about it for an occupancy, the opposite standpoint, using the space, but now it's tying the asset into it as well, right? So if you're doing a refresh or moving a team or planning a hybrid activity, you just need to make sure your equipment is in place, functional, and available. We can't fail in the office right now. Everybody's trying to get people in the office. Everything needs to work. Also, if somebody moves, you need to make sure that they get their items moved with them. That's a whole nother aspect of it that I touch a lot with occupancy and space planning is the moves part. So I know people can be very particular. And of course, it would just make everything easier when your asset information is in the same system as your moves and all of that. So I'm probably just stating the obvious.
It's funny to me how we have these instances, right, where it does, like, hindsight's 2020, and you hear things like just a Zoom being broken, is so obvious, and yet it's such a pain point for so many different companies. And I think to your point as well about, if someone moves, we wanna make sure that those assets are moving with them and that that visibility is present. And that's also why we made it possible to assign assets to people and not just spaces in our assets tool. If somebody moves a desk, their items will move too. So you can see if an asset is actually inactive, or if it's being serviced too often, or if it's nearing that end of life cycle, all of which can help better inform investments and space planning in general. Mary, final question. How do you see this changing the approach for workplace leaders?
I think that it will give them the clarity and confidence they need to make decisions. So having, like I said at the beginning, this visibility into your assets connects the cost and the performance and the experience aspects of the workplace. And when you have that kind of data, you can defend your budget, you can guide your strategy, and ultimately deliver a better solution.
I love that. Mary, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. If you're looking to bring more clarity, coordination, and confidence to your workplace strategy, we'd love to show you how to get even more out of the platform, including an in-depth walkthrough of the asset management tool on July 29th. We'll drop the details in the comments, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. Bye, Fallon.